All right, so as I was saying, my ex, I went to her work really because I just wanted to talk to her, and I wanted to tell her that I was afraid that she's gonna commit suicide, and I would like her to just maybe text me once a month or once every couple months, and not completely kick me out of her life, and just throw me out of her life completely, and just so I know she's okay, because like I said at the time, I was still driving to her place a lot just to check to see if her car was there, just to see if she was still alive, to see if she was moving her car. I check in the morning, I check at night. And, because, last time I talked to her, she was suicidal. But as I said, she had her friend Sylvie, who's a Jewish girl, because, my ex had a Jewish stepdad. So Sylvie's a Jewish girl, and my ex wanted to be Jewish, and she hung out with these like Jewish hippies, or at least she started to do that. Apparently, my ex that Sylvie just took her to one of the parties with the people who I knew. A lot of them are just like hippies, and they're drug addicts, and they're, you know, uh, polyamorous, and that was a party that when my ex told me that she was gonna go to the movies, she was like, "I'm gonna go to the movies," but really she was gonna go to that party with Sylvie, and she's basically wants to hang out with these drug addicts, and she told me she had done drugs with Sylvie, but like I said, I wanted Sylvie to help me to get back in contact with my ex, because Sylvie was the only way that I knew how to do that, because she was my ex's friend. So I got in touch with Johnny, and then Johnny got me in touch with Sylvie. But as I said, Sylvie tracked my phone, told me that she had to track my phone because I told her that I was worried that my ex was going to commit suicide. So I'd been checking on her car. So then she tracked my phone, and then so that she could see. But she told me that in a month my ex would talk to me. But then as I said, like a few days later, the police came to my door, the sheriff, and then he handed me a temporary restraining order. So then I called Johnny, and I was like, "Is this still going to happen?" And then Johnny, in a month, is my ex still going to talk to me? And Johnny said, "Yeah, that I don't know if they were trying to trick me. I don't know if they're trying to trick me or if my ex changed her mind. But Johnny told me that my ex and Sylvie said that in a month my ex was going to start talking to me again and see me, and so we could talk, because I wanted to talk, because I was really suffering a lot. This was only 6 months after after the abortion, and I was suffering a lot. And like I said, my main suffering was that I was afraid that my ex was going to kill herself, and I thought that would destroy my life. And I still worry about that. I still don't want her to ever kill herself. But because last time I talked to her, she said that she was suicidal. She wanted to kill herself. So then, as I said, but then Sylvie, then the court case came, and then I asked Johnny, should I go, because is my ex even gonna go? And then Johnny said, yeah, she's not gonna go. So he said I didn't have to go. And he told me that he told me he had to ask Sylvie and my ex if my ex was gonna go, and Sylvie told him that my ex said that she was not gonna go to the trial, but then she went to the trial. But I went to the trial just in case, even though Johnny told me I didn't need to. But I went just in case, and my ex was there, and I know she wanted to just get a restraining order with me and her whole family, but then I asked the judge for a postponement, and then I was messaging my ex, and I kept on messaging her. Like, first off, I was still afraid she was going to kill herself, so I continued to message her, like, please stay strong, please never hurt yourself, and, please don't do this. This can mess me up. I'm trying to go to Israel, play basketball, and like, I don't want to have a restraining order. This can mess me up. Don't do this to me, and doing all that. And I was texting Sylvie. I was like, why the fuck would you lie to me? Sylvie lied to me. She tried to trick me. She was deceitful. And then Sylvie was like, just let go of your ex. Read this book about love, and how if you're in love, you let go. And she's just a fake hippie girl. So, and like I said, she was very into like feminism, and it's the stereotypes, like the Jewish stereotypes of like, I saw her posting like she's a Jewish stereotype. She works in the music industry, so she puts out a lot of like polluted music, like crappy music, and that the Great Society, she works at festivals, like, again, drugs, pollution. It's the liberal Jewish stereotype of a Jewish girl who's, trying to destroy society, like, and that's what Sylvie represented. And but at the same time, I don't want to be too judgmental, but she my ex told me that she did cocaine with this girl Sylvie, like, weeks before meeting me and stuff. And then she tells me she's a lesbian. Sylvie told me she's a lesbian, that she was a lesbian, not my ex, but she said that she had kissed my ex before. And then she tries to trick me to not go to the trial, so that's kind of messed up. And then so I was pretty upset with Sylvie, and I was telling her, like, you're a whore. I was texting her all this stuff, and, like, I was really upset with her. And but again, like I said, my whole life I was a Marxist leftist, and I was the same way. I wanted race mixing. I was anti-white, and like I said, Sylvie, she would post on her Instagram, like, feminist stuff. Like, she posted this feminist party with all these, like, girls, and probably some of them were, like, one of them looked really Jewish and just, like, doing their feminist dance, and yeah, feminism. And again, my grandpa would say there's nothing wrong with feminism in terms of, like, but the idea is you don't want to be superior or inferior. You want to transcend the self. That's the flow, is transcendence of the self. But feminism, a lot of it is self-confirmatory, trying to be superior, trying to be equal, but still that's based off the illusion that there's a separate self, according to my grandpa. But so, but yeah, so, Sylvie's a drug addict, and I was just upset because now I'm thinking to myself, okay, now she tricked me to not go to the court case. She's going to try to get her restraining order against me, and now my ex is going to be going to all these parties with Sylvie, who she does cocaine with and does all these drugs with. I'm like, dude, this is fucked up. So I messaged Johnny, and Johnny told me, hey, well, I guess she just decided to go to the trial. I didn't know. She must have decided last minute to go to the trial. So then I went to the trial, but I had already sent like 500 text messages to my ex. Most of them were just me saying, like, hey, sweetie, please stay strong. Please never hurt yourself. Because, again, I was super scared that she was going to kill herself. It really was a terrible fear because like I said, I did love her, and I was really scared she was going to kill herself. And I thought that would destroy my life. But then the other thing was, so that was basically it. And but then the trial came, and then my ex basically got the restraining order because this is the thing. I called my friend Ryan Zelig, who's a lawyer, and I asked him, do you think I'm going to get the restraining order? And he said, no. He said, you didn't do anything. He said, all you did was go to her office. He said, you said you owe me $1,000. I'm going to get you fired. But he said, that's not grounds to get a restraining order. He said, you didn't do anything worthy of a restraining order. But then I told him, but I sent her a bunch of text messages since I got the temporary restraining order. He said, yeah, you'll get it just because of that. But I only sent those text messages after the first court date, when, after she tried to trick me. And then that's when I started sending the text messages saying, hey, like, sweetie, you said your friend said that you weren't going to go to the court date. And then once I started texting, I continued to text because I was like, all right, I already texted. So he said, yeah, you'll probably get the restraining order just because of the text messages that you sent. But he said, you didn't do anything that was serious. He said, all you did was you wanted to talk to her. He said, this is very, I forget the word he used. Like, it's very minimal. Like, it's very, I forget the word he used, very trivial. He said, you didn't do anything worthy of a restraining order, except for the fact that you text messaged her after the temporary restraining order. So I did get the temporary restraining order, but then my ex was like, well, can I get the restraining order for Sylvie and for my mom and for my dad and for my whole family and for everybody? But the judge was like, no, just for you and your daughter. Because on the restraining order, my ex said, like, that I stalked her daughter. Like, I went to her daughter's preschool. And yeah, I did go to her daughter's preschool, but that was way before. And that was when she was pregnant with my baby, and I was afraid because she said that she needed me to take care of her because she was on bed rest and she wasn't getting back to me. So I had to go to the preschool to tell them that, she can't take care of her daughter and be in bed rest at the same time, to talk to the principal so I could see if I could talk to the baby dad. But the way that my ex made it seem like I was stalking her daughter or something. So the judge asked me, she was like, So you went to her preschool. She's like, this is, this seems kind of serious. No, it wasn't anything. Like my ex tried to make it look like I was a stalker, like I was stalking her. And no, I didn't do anything negative. I never did anything negative. So then I got the restraining order. But as I said, at that time, I still believed in Darwinism. I still believed in like Marxism. And I believe that that religion was just an epiphenomena of Darwinism, and religion was white supremacist, and that's why I was a Marxist, because I thought religion was white supremacist. But I think this is a part of what broke me out of that, was my ex told me, she said, when I asked her after the abortion, I asked her, what was the daughter's name? And she said the name was Ariana. And that made me think of Aryan. And like she killed my daughter, like killing the Aryan race. And like I said, she was a race mixer. She had a Salvadorian daughter, a little brown daughter. And, she had the Jewish stepdad. So she was probably her whole family was into race mixing because she had the Jewish stepdad. And they probably were like, we love our Jewish stepdad. And the white people's evil, like the Jews thinking, let's all race mix and be brown. So, I think her other sister had like a brown husband or whatever. So, she wanted to be like, she had a brown Salvadorian daughter. And, like I said, she, with her daughter, she had her daughter with, she would have her daughter have play dates with this black girl named Anna Rose because she didn't want her daughter with play dates with the white girl. She said because she didn't want her around those types of people. I think because she was afraid of racism, and, so she was kind of anti-white probably, because she had a Jewish stepdad. And I started to realize this. And then I started to think like, because I was posting all this stuff about Darwinism, about because I was saying the reason why women tend to, because there's physical cheating and there's emotional cheating. And the idea is with physical cheating, men tend to be more upset about physical cheating. Like, because my idea was because it's genetic Darwinism, because men don't want their women physically cheating because then they can lose their genes going on in the future generations. But women, because men are never certain about the paternity of the children, right? But women, they're more concerned about emotional cheating. So like a man will be upset if his woman goes to the club and has sex with another man. And I was thinking that's why, my ex when my ex was going to the, lied to me about going to the party, she's thinking, you're jealous. Like, what's the big deal? Again, she's a feminist and stuff, but, and she has a Jewish stepdad and the Jewish friend, Sylvie and stuff. But she's like, what's the big deal? You're jealous. It's like, a lot of women don't understand that men don't like physical cheating. So, she might go to the party and she might screw some guy, but she'd be like, big deal. I don't love him. It was just physical cheating. I studied this at UC San Diego, but, and I started studying this at the time, that men just don't like physical cheating. And the idea is because then the man won't be certain of the paternity of the child, and then he won't be certain of his genes. But whereas women, they don't really care so much if their guy goes out and has sex with a woman at the club, so long as he doesn't love her. So women care about emotional cheating. So, a man will be upset if the woman just has sex with a guy. But if the woman just, tells a guy, I love you, a man won't really care that much so long as he's not having sex with her. But if a man is like text messaging another girl and tells her like, I love you, that's emotional cheating. Even if he doesn't have sex with her, the woman will hate that. The woman is more concerned about emotional cheating because the woman's more concerned about resources, and she knows that the baby's going to be hers. She knows that. But so she's more scared that the man's going to give his resources to another woman and not to her baby. So that's why women are more concerned about emotional cheating. But you see, I still saw things in a Darwinian perspective. So I wanted to study everything and see everything in Darwinian perspective. And like I said, that's why I was like, that's my idea would be like, okay, the Bible, it didn't come from God. What happened was, the Jews were Canaanite serfs, and they wanted to share, and they were into taking care of the poor because, they came from a Canaanite serf society where they were, they had Marxist revolutions, and they know how important it is to take care of the poor, because if you don't, you'll create Marxist revolutions, and that's bad for genes. So, it's, people will say, oh, it came from God to take care of the poor. But no, it makes sense in Darwinian perspective to take care of the poor because it stops Marxist revolutions, and Marxist revolutions are bad for the genes of the society. Chaos is bad for genes. So I wanted to see everything as through a Darwinian lens. But, but the reason why I want to see things with Darwinian lens, I know, was because I was against religion because I saw religion as white supremacist and maintaining the status quo. So I wanted, and like I said, I wanted to believe that Christianity was just a Darwinian trick by the Jews to defeat the Indo-European, to make them to convert them to Christianity, which would save them, which would save the Jews. And like I said, I thought that was explicit in the Bible, where Jesus goes on the cross and it saves, and it says the blood was on the Jews. And the idea is the blood of the sacrificial lamb is supposed to save people from their sins. So the Jews are supposed to be killed, but by converting the enemy to Christianity, it saved the Jews from having to be killed, because it converted their enemy to a religion that would help the Jews. So I was thinking that, it's all, you could explain it all through Darwinism, but because I wanted to destroy religion, I wanted to say it's just Darwinism. I was looking at a materialistic lens and not a spiritual lens. So I'll describe how my grandpa kind of taught me things that allowed me to see things through the existential metapsychiatry perspective, and I started to see that. But I'll get to that. So I also seeing things through the materialist lens. So I wanted to think, oh yeah, it's just Darwinism. But that's why, because I saw things through a Darwinian lens, that's why I had sex without, and tried to get my ex pregnant and have a baby with her out of wedlock. And I didn't care, and I wasn't discerning, I wasn't in the flow, because I was trying to be superior, because I saw things through a Darwinian lens. So my satanic way of seeing things, my anti-religious, anti-spiritual way of seeing things, now I know it led to negative consequences. My grandpa would say it's existentially invalid. It led to invalid consequences. And that was the pain that I went through. So I started to recognize this. But I'll get to how I really started to recognize it. But at this time, still, it wasn't complete. And at this time, I was actually dating this black girl. And I was trying to get her pregnant, because I was still thinking about trying to be superior and have my genes spread. And like I said, it was because I always saw white Christian religion as white supremacist, and I saw myself as Jewish, and I wanted to destroy the white race, because I saw the white race as the biggest threat to the Jews. So, and I saw the Jews as victims. I thought that religion tended to be victim blaming and conservative, and I wanted to destroy religion because I wanted everybody to mix to defeat the white race. But then I started to realize, I started to recognize, wait. So, and I started to recognize it's because I see myself as Jewish, and I wanted to mix the white race, and I see myself as more black. So I started to write my new book, my Merc Diesel story book. And I started, and the other thing was, when I was with my ex, we watched that movie with Adam Sandler. And Adam Sandler's like, someone asked him, like, why do Jews like basketball so much? And I started to realize, the reason why I like basketball and rap so much was because, I saw myself as more black. I saw myself as Jewish, and it was anti-white. And I started, and I was also looking at all the stuff online, all the people on X and all the people on Facebook and stuff, and all of them are talking about, like, the Jews want to mix the white people, and the Jews promote miscegenation and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's true. I was like, yeah, I've always been like that. But my grandpa would say it's not because they're Jews. My grandpa would say it's dualistic software. So I was expressing dualistic software, predator-prey software, or superior-inferior software, impersonal. But mine was more impersonal because I wanted to mix the white people. I was action-oriented, impersonal. So I started to realize, okay, I started to have these epiphanies, and I was like, yeah, I've always been for Darwinism. Because, another reason I was for Darwinism was because, like I said, my grandpa confused me, because my grandpa, he seemed to be a materialist, and he seemed to be, like, scientific and stuff, but at the same time spiritual. And I didn't understand that. And I liked the idea that he was scientific because it was anti-religion, I thought. But then I started to realize, like, okay, I started to recognize, and I looked back at 2013 when I literally wanted to create a forecast society and mix all the races and destroy religion. And I wanted to promote Islam and get the dark races to mix with the white races and get Islam, because I wanted to destroy Christianity. And I just was realizing, like, yes, what people say about the Jews is true. Like, I always wanted to race mix the white people. And I was a liberal leftist, and I did want to race mix the white people. And so I started to see all this, and I was just like, so I started writing a book about it, and I started going through my life about how I was like that, And then, but so my grandpa would say, but I still was in dualistic software. So I'll get to this. But my grandpa said, I wasn't, it was not because it's because of dualistic software. And so I'll get to how I started to recognize my grandpa's teachings about what existentially valid way of viewing things, seeing things in a spiritual perspective as opposed to the materialist perspective that I used to have. So I'm going to get to that. But I just had these epiphanies, and I was like, yeah, you know, I have my whole life been a Marxist, materialist, anti-white. And I also realized I was a Satanist because I was like, yeah, you know, and I started to recognize, yeah, Shukracharya in Hinduism, he was for the Dravidians, and he was a Marxist, and he was against the Aryans. And I was like, dude, I've been a Satanist my whole life, and I didn't even know it. Because in my life, remember, I saw the white man as the devil, but I was like, no, the black people are actually in the Hindu mythology the devils. And they're trying to destroy the religion. They're trying to destroy the white race. And I was like, whoa. So I had this big epiphany. And that would not have happened if it wasn't for my ex. You know, because it was the pain that I was going through. And I was writing all this stuff. I was writing this stuff, my Darwinian ideas online to actually to try to impress my ex with how smart I was. Like, because if you see things in Darwinian perspective and you're a leftist, you seem more smart. But then I started to realize, dude, my whole life, I've been a leftist. Marxist, and that, like I said, that was even part of the reason why I wanted to have a baby out of wedlock, because I was like, I want to be like a black guy, you know, and have a baby out of wedlock, because I don't care about society, I don't care about religion, and I want to be like a black guy and promote black as opposed to white, you know. So I started to see all this. So I'll continue.